Podcast with Hope Gables Canine. This is episode
3.
This is episode 3 of the You Heard Me podcast. Welcome, everybody. As people start joining, we're going to send a reminder and we're going to share a reminder across our social media, which we typically will do. As another reminder, we do ask for questions earlier in the week. So feel free. We do post that on our Instagram stories quite a bit. So if something comes to mind earlier in the week, you might, if you're not able to join on Thursday, you can always watch recap episodes. So get your questions in. You don't necessarily have to tune in. We'll still answer them. And then again, we always share the recap episodes after the fact as well. So again, we're going to get into it. We're going to start with a lead-in topic. All right. And so our lead-in topic, we took a poll. I'm a big fan of polls. We took a poll. I like hearing from everybody what they want to hear about. And the consensus was that everybody wanted to learn about the common mistakes that we see people make. And I just want to clarify that this is not pointing fingers at anybody. This is really just talking about the things that we see to really spread awareness so that you at home can avoid some of these mistakes from happening. So again, none of this is we're not client shaming. We're not going to call anybody out. We're simply just going to talk about the most common mistakes that we see people make so that you can avoid those. All right. So I promise I'm not being rude. I'm going to grab my cell phone because I did make a list, although I do remember the first one. And the first one is consoling your dog when they look fearful or anxious. I thought that was a pretty common one. Okay. So basically, why wouldn't you want to console your dog when they look fearful, anxious, etc.? Okay. Now, what we see a lot of times is when dogs exhibit these mannerisms, right? When we see our dog struggling, naturally, what we want to do is we want to step in. And it's a very nurturing thing. We want to help make things easier for them. Okay. How do we do that? Well, well, many different ways. We pick our dogs up a lot of times. A lot of times when we see a dog that's anxious, we'll go and say it's okay. We'll pet them, things like that. Not we, but this is what we see, people do. And the problem with that is, A, you're just reinforcing how they're feeling. And B, you're not really setting them up for success by doing that. Okay. Now, obviously, there are those scenarios where you have to pick your dog up and get them out of there. We're not talking about those scenarios specifically. We're talking about the times when it can be avoided. Okay. So if you can avoid picking your dog up, I would highly recommend that you avoid doing that. And what types of dogs are always picked up? The small ones.
Yes.
For the most part, right? Because it's manageable.
They can be picked up,
right? So, and that's why we see small dogs a lot really struggle with anxiety, really struggle with fear, really struggle with attachment of separation anxiety. Mm-hmm. The smaller dogs, for sure, and I'm not saying big dogs don't struggle with anxiety, fear, because they certainly can, but the small ones definitely take the cake for it. And it's just a reflection of our behavior as well. All right. And so what would we do alternatively? Well, instead of, you see your dog fearful, anxious, stressed, whatever it might be, instead of petting them, what you want to do is you want to work them through it. And we have tons of videos on our Instagram of us doing this. In fact, I can think of one specifically of a dog. His name was Nugget. And he just happened to have a fear of what are those manhole covers in the street? I don't know the proper name for them. A manhole cover or it wasn't a grate because his paws weren't going to fall through it. It was actual cover. So regardless. So we noticed that he had this phobia, right? This fear of manhole covers as we were walking him. And we didn't know this until we walked him downtown. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So what we did is we worked him through it because the manhole cover is the same level of the street. He just had this weird phobia, right? So we just worked him through it. We taught him how to walk on top of it, and we rewarded him for succeeding and going across it for the very first time. Yeah, of course he was stressed. The second, third, fourth, fifth, he was running over that thing like it was like he was super happy about it. He was super confident because we helped build his confidence. We didn't just go, yeah, you know what? Avoid that thing. Or no, it's okay. It's just a manhole cover. No, we used the leash. We used treats. We built up his confidence and we taught him how to succeed. And I don't think that we're doing that enough. I don't think when we see our dogs anxious, fearful, I think that we are going about it, again, not we, but the dog community, I feel like a lot of times, or the dog owner community rather, a lot of times is going about it the wrong way. It's a switch in mindset, which is instead of making this easier for you by removing you from the situation, how can I work you through it? How can I build your confidence? How can the next time around I can set you up to tackle this same scenario in a more confident way than the last time? And again, there are many ways you can go about doing that. A combination of using leash pressure, rewarding the dog, using marker words like yes, right? Getting them excited for achieving a challenge. This is how you build your dog's confidence, all right? Picking them up, again, unless it's like a dire scenario or a life and death scenario, sure, pick them up, get them out of there. But if you can avoid it, you really want to build their confidence, all right?
Avoid consoling them.
Avoid consoling them, avoid picking your dog up, and avoid petting them when they look anxious. You're only reinforcing those emotions. So
they'll think it's okay that's happening.
Yeah, and you're going to get those emotions more and more and more. And what's going to happen is your dog, after year after year after year after year, they're going to become an emotional wreck where they get triggered, fearful, anxious, and they just don't know how to deal with it. And then they seek you out because that's the only way they feel comfort. But you're not always going to be around, and not only just that, you want your dog to be able to be okay in these scenarios. That's why you are consoling them. But once you realize that consoling them, picking them up, petting them when they look anxious, fearful, isn't actually helping them, it's not helping them grow and succeed, then you need to start looking at different options to help build their confidence, right? And just like the example I gave with Nugget and how we taught him how to walk over one of those, again, I don't know the perfect word for it, one of those manhole covers. I mean, it took 6 reps and he was walking right over it because nobody ever taught him how to do that. And so that's really why we exist, is trainers like us, is to help build confidence, right? Because that is a learning issue. All right. There are dogs that won't do things, but it's not a learning issue. They just, I don't want to do this. And that's a different scenario. That's totally different. That's not a dog that lacks confidence. That's a dog that understands what you want, but there's competing motivators. 2 entirely different dogs, and we would tackle those 2 situations entirely differently. Okay. So for those of you that are tuning in, again, the lead-in topic was, what are the most common mistakes that we see owners make? And again, the first one, as I'm discussing right now, is to we see owners console their dogs when they look anxious. And again, you really, really want to control your own emotions and show some restraint and help your dog work through whatever that challenge is. And I think I listed that as number 1 because that is literally one of the most common mistakes that we see people make. Did I miss anything? How did I do on that?
Very good.
I started a little bit quicker getting into it today because
and to the point.
All right, I'm getting better. This is episode 3. Let's all have some fun. I think we're getting into the groove, and I wore a vintage dog shirt. I think I'm gonna make it a thing. This is a vintage Nike dog shirt. If you don't know this about me, and I am gonna go on a little bit quick tangent. Now that I finished the lead-in. Yeah, here we go. Now that I finished the lead-in topic, I'm going to take a little aside. But, if you know me, you know that I collect vintage things, whether it's a shirt or I can't tell you how many vintage antique dog books I have. I have dog books from I don't even know, 100 years ago or whatever. I have so many dog books, I don't even know what to do with them. And then I started collecting dog t-shirts. I've got tons of dog t-shirts. And so, and now we're, vintage anything. I'm a big thrift person. So if you didn't know that about me, now you do. And maybe I will make this a thing for the podcast where I show up with a different dog shirt, although I don't have as many as I do books. But getting back into it.
Why don't you remind everyone how they can log in to put a question into the chat?
Good point. All right, so to log in, I believe you can use your Gmail account. For those of you that are tuned in right now, if you would like to ask questions in the chat, you do have to log in. I'm pretty sure you can use your Gmail account. Again, Google and YouTube are part of the same thing. And yeah, feel free to drop your questions into the chat, and we will answer those questions. We do have questions that people submitted earlier this week. We're going to always start with the submissions we got earlier in the week, and then we will move on to the live questions in the chat. But we will get to everybody's question, I promise. That's my promise to you. And for everybody that just is continuing to join, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for your support. Again, this is the You Heard Me podcast, episode 3. Many more episodes on the horizon. And we are a behavior modification company based in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And we deal with all sorts of behaviors. So our job for this podcast is to share our expertise so that you at home can tackle and navigate some complex behaviors that you might be experiencing with your dog. Okay. All right. So I would love to get into questions so that we can, sort of keep the ball rolling. So Alyssa, if you can, you know what? I didn't do my thing. This is my beautiful wife, Alyssa. I'm going to do that every podcast. We're going to have some consistent things. So my beautiful wife, Alyssa, will be the one reading off questions. And let's get into it.
Okay. Our first question is, do you have tips for an 8-year-old dog who hates getting brushed? She bites endlessly.
All right. So, okay, this is something that a lot of people struggle with. The grooming aspect, whether it's teeth brushing or brushing the fur, or I've even had dogs that you go to dry them off after being in the rain. They get, kind of nippy and some actually will get aggressive. Here's the thing. Counter conditioning works to a degree. So just for everybody out there, counter conditioning is basically you're reversing the way your dog thinks about these practices, right? Getting groomed, teeth brushing, etc. And a lot of times when this stuff isn't done at a very young age, the dog's just not used to it, or they had a really bad experience, or they went to a groomer that was a little bit rough with them, or, they had some sort of negative interaction, or with things like nail cutting. Sometimes an owner cuts the nail too short and the dog yelps, and then the dog's like, I don't like that anymore. And then, sometimes we get in our heads and we're like, oh my God, I'm so anxious that I might do it again. And then that anxiety feeds into the dog's anxiety, and then it becomes this spiral. So that's sort of how these things start occurring. But how would you tackle it? Look, the older the dog, the harder it is to counter condition how they feel about teeth brushing, nail cutting, brushing the fur, etc. Certainly, though, I would start with counter conditioning. There are tons of resources online. You can search counter conditioning. How would I counter condition? There's going to be tons of videos. We also will have our own videos. We are working very hard on launching an e-learning platform over the next couple months. We're going to have tons of videos. So we'll be able to direct everybody to that. In the meantime, like I said, you can go on YouTube, find tons of videos on counter conditioning. What is counter conditioning? Basically, you're going to find something your dog loves, whether it's peanut butter or we use freeze-dried beef liver, whatever the dog really loves. The more aversive they are towards the getting their teeth brushed, nail cut, brushed their fur, etc.
High resource treat.
Yeah.
Right?
High value treat.
Higher value.
So now high value treats work because what you're doing is you're trying to reverse all the negative feelings the dog has about whatever it is that you're trying to do. Okay. And so what you want to do is you want to start slow. You don't want to just okay, I'm going to brush you 12 times and then give you a treat. I don't know how the dog responds. If you just show them the brush, is that when they're starting to kind of, be a little, okay, I don't like this. Then that's where you start. And I'm going to take it even a step further, which is again, the older the dog, you may not be able to fully counter condition this. You might actually just have to, again, push the dog through it and just be like, hey, we have to do this for your own health and wellness. So no, don't bite me. No, don't, nip me, put a leash on the dog so that they can't run away from it, work them through it. If they're not food motivated, it depends. If the dog is super aggressive, then we're talking about muzzling and we're talking about muzzle conditioning so that the dog can't actually bite you. But at some point, we need to be able to care for our dogs. We need to be able to brush them, cut their nails, brush their teeth, etc. And we can't just always allow our dogs to just be like, nah, I'm not doing this. I get it. There's an aversion there. We want to work the dog through it. We want to try to counter condition it and change the way they feel about it. We're going to use food. We're going to use high value treats. But when that stuff fails, you have to just do the next best thing, which is, hey, we got to cut your nails. What do you think when you bring your dog to the vet? What do you think they're doing? What do you think? It's you gotta get through it. Okay. Do one nail at a time if you have to. Grab the paw, boom, throw some treats on the floor. Okay. All right. So you don't have to do all the nails. And I know this specific question was around brushing, but a couple brushes, yay, yes. All right. Throw some food on the ground, or beef liver treats. Do another couple brushes. Yes. Throw some beef liver on the ground or give it to them or what have you. Start slow and try that. So usually that will work. But if it's very severe, you're going to have to push your dog through it. If they're aggressive, you're going to put a muzzle on and you're just going to get through it. You're going to cut the nails. You're going to be quick about it. Boom. It's over with. Okay. That's it. I mean, that's reality. The reality is not what the popular information that you might see online. Everybody's going to be like, well, the dog's super fearful of it. So, yeah, but we also need to be able to care for our dogs. And, we could do the best we can by changing the way they think about it. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to cut our dog's nails and brush them and things like that. So, start with counter conditioning, see how far you can get with counter conditioning, start slow, couple brushes at a time, give them some freeze-dried beef liver or whatever your dog likes. Try to change the way they think about it. Otherwise, put a leash on, use a muzzle if you have to, and just get through it if you can. And usually through that, the dog will stop fighting, which is interesting. When you take away the dog's options, like running away from you and actually biting you, watch how quickly they just allow you to do it. I mean, that's another big thing. And that kind of is what I was talking about in the beginning of the podcast, which is like, it's like, work them through it. And sometimes you can work dogs through it with food. And sometimes you just have to work the dog through it by removing their options. No, you can't bite me. No, you can't run away from this. I have to be able to care for you. And that's reality. And I'm sorry to have to be the person to constantly talk about the reality of the situation, but you're not going to find a lot of this online. You're not going to, I think people are being misled. I think people are being misled in a lot of ways. And I think this is why when people go on YouTube and read articles, they're like, well, this isn't working. Yeah, of course it's not working because you're not reading or following guidance of people that are willing to tell you the truth. Hopefully. I know I went on a little tangent there.
You did. Okay. Yeah, we're going to the next question. My dog seems to get annoyed around children and irritable. Why is that?
All right. So, they're unpredictable. All right. Children are unpredictable. They're running around, screaming, a lot of high energy. And some dogs just don't respond well to that level of unpredictability and energy, right? And so we deal with this a lot where your dogs will be reactive towards children. And again, it really comes down to a high level of unpredictability and a high level of energy in the room. And especially if the dog is like, an Aussie or something and they have herding instincts, you might run into issues there as well. Okay. I actually just saw a video of a little kid running around a room with like 10 puppy Aussies, and they weren't being like mean to the kid, but they knocked him over. And I think it was like a breeder or something, but, and they were fine with him, but they knocked him over. And I think he like hurt his finger or something. And of course, everybody in the comments were like, why would you let 10 puppy Aussies chase after your kids? And whatever. I mean, it's a breeder. They were just playing. I mean, it's a breeder. Obviously, who am I to judge? But, going back to the point, yeah. So how do you help your dog through that? Well, you advocate for their space. This is going to be a common thread for a lot of reactive behaviors, but especially with children. You want to advocate for your dog's space. You want to give them places in the home where they can go and decompress, whether that's a crate, whether you put them on their place and you don't allow anybody to go near their place. Dogs need places to feel like their space isn't going to be violated when there's a lot of energy going on, especially when there are kids around. And I'm going to ruffle some feathers with this, you need to also equally, because young kids aren't mature enough to have the conversation of, hey, dogs need their own personal space. You're going to have to be able to be that kind of goalie and go, oh, no. X, Y, and Z is resting. Okay. They're learning how to exist and coexist with you. Please don't go over and take their bone out from under them. Please don't. Again, if the dog's a resource guarding dog, don't even have resources around. Why even take the chance? But, if the dog's just reacting or barking or nipping at their, ankles or whatever, make sure the dog understands their boundaries, has a crate or a place command, advocate for their space, and equally correct them for unprovoked funny business. Okay. So there are dogs that will do this that are doing it unprovoked. All right. Some do it provoked. Some also will do it unprovoked. And yes, I certainly would correct that behavior. If it was an unprovoked thing, like one of the kids was just walking by the dog and the dog's like, rah, like, no, that's not okay, right? He wasn't even bothering you. Like, that's not cool. And there has to be a balance there. But everything's a balance. Like, yes, hey, I will advocate for you. I won't let the kids jump on top of your placeboard. I won't let the kids jump on top of you when you're uncomfortable. But you equally have to meet me halfway, and you cannot just unprovoked just go after the kids in the house. That's not okay under any circumstance.
Okay, that was good.
Thank you. Doing better.
An anxious dog who hates car rides, pants, whines, and will literally drool and foam at the mouth the entire time. What should we do to help her feel more comfortable?
Yeah, this is a rough one. So, car rides are tough, especially when there's a high level of anxiety. So this is one of the rare circumstances where I will recommend, depending on the severity, if it's really that severe, like what this person's describing, you probably would benefit from talking to your vet and seeing if there's like something you can give your dog to help take the edge off. I mean, I'm talking like if it's severe, the dog's literally foaming and drooling everywhere or even throwing up. That's some pretty severe anxiety. And again, that's one of the few scenarios I will recommend medication to take the edge off. Most circumstances, I can train a dog and they won't need medication ever. We've had very anxious dogs come here on Prozac and we've taught them how to settle and they don't need it anymore. So yeah, I would talk to your vet. I would see if there's something. And then in addition to that, you want to combine training with whatever they recommend to you. Teach a down stay in the car. I don't know if the dog is just sitting there, just like staring out the window, like just like panting and drooling. Well, put them in a down. A dog in a down is going to settle a lot faster than a dog that's just like sitting there in this anxiety spiral. So teach them a down, put them in a down stay. Again, we're going to have videos on all of this, and then teach them how to settle in a down. And then also talk to your vet and see what they recommend. And I'm not a health professional or expert, so I defer to your vet on what they say with that. But I think it's going to have to be a combination of the two. If it's as severe as what you're describing, I don't think just teaching a down is going to stop that. And let me go even one step further than that. If it's really that severe, depending on how old the dog is, you may not be able to make the anxiety go away fully. I would just kind of set your expectations that you could probably make it better. And even if it's 20% better, that's better than 0% better.
And it could just also be a combination of anxiousness and motion sickness,
right?
Too.
Exactly, and that's why I'm recommending, talk to your vet, see what they recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Going to the next question here. I can't get my dog to drop his ball. He thinks it's a game, and it's impossible to play with him because he turns it into a chase.
Yeah, another common one. I mean, so basically you would want to teach either a drop it, well, probably just a drop it. I mean, a drop it would be sufficient in this circumstance. So yeah, what dogs will do is they'll like bring the ball back. You go to pick it up. They go to put it in their mouth. They run away from you because, you're chasing them and you want to play fetch, but they're like, well, I like just getting chased. That's more fun for me. Teach the dog a drop it. But here's the problem with just teaching a drop it. And this kind of goes into my earlier point, which is, just teaching a drop it is not enough. And that was actually part of one of the sort of mistakes that I sort of see is sometimes we think just because our dog knows something that they're just going to want to do it. And I think again, we're being misled in many ways. And people are saying to us, well, if you teach your dog this, then they're just going to do it. Like, that's not reality. And I hate to be a critic, but if you guys are going to succeed at home, somebody's got to be able to tell you like what the facts are here. Just your dog knowing how to drop it. If that was the case, you would not be asking probably this question. And I've also had dogs come to this program knowing a drop it, and their drop it was like 10% reliable. Like they did it like 2 out of 10 times. That's not reliability. So we have to get away from this idea of just because we taught our dog something, they're just going to do it. What is missing in that equation? Accountability for something they know. And honestly, that is like 90% of people that when they teach a command to a dog, they're missing the accountability part of it. Just like us, if somebody taught us how to drive, okay, when we don't follow the rules of the road, we're going to get held accountable. If I run a stop sign, I'm going to get held accountable. If I run a red light, I'm going to get held accountable, right? Why aren't we holding the same values for our dogs? And then again, you'll get well, they're dogs. Okay, but yeah, if dogs and people don't learn much differently than each other. And that's another thing that I think is not being said enough in the industry. And I know why it's not said enough in the industry, because what it does is it sort of discredits a certain side of training, right? What if I told you dogs and people learn scientifically? So all these people that say like, pay attention to the science of how dogs learn. Yeah, we do, because dogs don't just learn with food only, right? That's what the science says. All right. So behavior science, and I'm not going to get into a whole spiel on behavior science, but dogs need accountability for the utmost reliability. So going back to the drop it command, of course your dog is going to, if you're, he's like, oh, well, he or she, I like getting chased. All right. And if you chase me, then I'm just going to keep doing it. Of course that's going to happen. All right. Drop it. Drop it because I've seen you do it. All right. But right now you're not doing it and I want to play fetch. I want to be able to engage with you. Drop it. You don't drop it. All right. Mild correction. Just like if I ran a stop sign, I'm not going to get a $5,000 ticket, but I might get a $200 ticket. I don't know, 100. I don't know what tickets are. I don't run stop signs very often. But there needs,
because you're held accountable.
Exactly. Oh, good point. Because I'm held accountable, and we just don't hold these same values for our dogs. And this is why a lot of people struggle with reliability. So teach a drop it, and then also teach a consequence for not dropping it. And that applies to every command, whether it's sit, down, come, etc. You want to take a chance with your dog running towards a busy street, and you don't want to have accountability. I think that's crazy. And I would hold the same standard for the come command as I would for any other command. That's really what it comes down to. And then now you'll be able to engage with your dog in a way where you've never been able to before because of the consequence of not dropping it. So your relationship will actually grow. And I know I say this a lot, but that's not exemplified enough, and it needs to be exemplified more so that people can have better relationships with their dogs, so that they can actually engage with them and be able to do things they've never been able to do before, and your relationship will grow because of that. So that's my piece on that.
Okay. Next question. My dog absolutely despises the neighbor's dog and will lunge and bark at him through the fence. I have to go out there and grab him by the collar to get him inside. It's embarrassing. Any tips?
Sure. Yeah. So fence fighting is very common. We have many clients that have fences and, arch nemesis on the other side of the fence. And then, some clients that have come to us specifically for that reason. In fact, years ago, Alyssa used to come with me to all our lessons. And I'm sure we can think of like at least 5 off the top of our head where we went out to a house and this issue was happening just as it was described. So a trainer online, I follow some really, really, really skilled, articulate trainers that I highly look up to as well. And we're all colleagues. We all share information amongst each other. And so I'm very fortunate to be part of a group of trainers that, we're all building each other up instead of knocking each other down, which is an issue for a different day, which is what part of the industry is all about. But so what you want to do, one of the trainers that I converse with quite often, put it in a very good way, right? So it's basically, sorry, I have an itchy nose. It's basically you want to correct the bad behavior and then give your dog a job. Okay, so correction, and then what do I want you to do after that? So for a dog that's fighting, fence fighting, okay, well, don't fence fight, and then I'm going to give you a job to keep you out of trouble. All right. So, man, I really wish I remember the trainer who put it this way because I would give them credit. I'll go back and look because I definitely bookmarked it on Instagram. But so basically, you correct the behavior, you give your dog a job so that you can keep them out of trouble. And the way they put it was more articulate than I am. They put it a little bit more eloquently than I'm stating it here. But fundamentally, what you're going to do is if your dog is barking at the fence line, no, don't do that. Call them back to you, give them a job. That's the job. Call them back to you with the come command, with recall command. Okay. And then you're in the house. Because if I can't trust you being outside without fence fighting, then you're not out there. That's how that works. Just the same way if your kid was throwing a temper tantrum in a store because you didn't buy them, whatever their favorite Lego set, which Lego sets now are like you see how expensive Lego sets are now? This is crazy, like $500 Lego
It's a huge thing.
It's insane. I don't even know if that's how, I mean, everything's more expensive now, but it would be the same thing. You're going to remove, you can't be here, right? Because you're acting out and you're getting yourself into trouble. So no, I'm not going to have you just sit out here if you can't behave yourself. And through correcting that behavior, your dog will understand, oh, I can be out here, but I can be out here and not do that, but I can do all these other things. I can be out here and play with a ball. No correction. Great. But that's the thing I get corrected for. And then yes, you will eventually, through those corrections, your dog will just understand, when I'm out here, I just shouldn't bark at the fence line. And if I don't like cut it out, then I'm coming back inside. And that's how you're going to solve that issue.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but those Lego sets are crazy. Like, oh man. I wanted one of the Star Wars ones. I'm such a nerd. I wanted one of the Star Wars ones. It was like $600. It's insane. Who's buying this stuff for their kids? I mean, I don't know. I mean, we spend a lot of money on our dog, so it is what it is.
True.
You know.
Okay.
But anyway.
My parents and dog walker watch our dogs a lot, and I feel like their training is going to regress. We've made so much progress, but I get worried when other people watch them. It's nothing against them at all, but how would you help explain to them the importance of not doing certain things that we know only makes their behavior worse?
Yeah. So, we get this question a lot. We get this question a lot with clients of ours that do board and trains with us, which is like, I'm going on vacation like a month after the board and train. What do I do? Like, is my dog going to regress? So this is going to be a couple part answer. Bark. You said bark. I said a couple bark answer. So yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, okay. So here's the thing, right? The people that are going to be most invested in your dog's training are you. Okay. And I really love the thinking ahead and being proactive. I love when I get this question because it means that you're being proactive and you're thinking ahead. What if I go on vacation? What am I going to do? How is my dog's training going to be held, accountable and maintained and continued and all that? I love that for that reason. So I love when we get questions because your mind's in the right place. Now, what you want to understand and just set your expectations is that, like I said, the people that are going to be most invested in the training of your dog are you. And so, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot to train a dog. It's also a lot to continue their training as well. And so you can't really put that on another person. Yes, a lot. If the person loves you, they're going to do the best they can to continue the training. But you have to understand that they're not going to be as skilled as you because they haven't spent as much time doing the things that you have. So sometimes people get really overwhelmed. They go into it with a good intention. They're like, oh yeah, no, I'll use the leash and the e-collar and all that stuff. It's not probably going to happen in the way that you think it's going to happen. So just set your expectations and do the best you can. What I would do is show them the things that are like baseline stuff, like how do I, correct a bad behavior? How do, if the dog jumps, what do I do? Or, you can even show them how to send the dog to place if they're getting too much. If, you could show them some baseline stuff, but I wouldn't like try to teach them an e-collar, because that's not going to happen.
It also takes a while for yourself,
right,
the dog owner, to even learn it. Like
right.
It took us, or I'm still learning.
Yeah,
exactly how to, it takes time, it takes practice and learning and teaching your dog and having, them reciprocate and understand what you're teaching them. So it's not like you can just show your dog walker or,
right,
your family members overnight. So like you said, just the basic foundation. Exactly.
I think you put it perfectly. And just so everybody knows, I mean, Alyssa helps out with the training, but she's commuting to the city and back. She works a full-time job and obviously we have a whole team here that are here every day, all day, Monday through Sunday. So we have plenty of support to go around. But Alyssa does get involved on the weekends when she's not working and things like that. But yeah, so to bring that up, I mean, it's going to take Alyssa longer to learn the skills because she's got other responsibilities. And that's no different from any of you at home. I mean, you have jobs and you're commuting and so that's why I think it's really important for Alyssa to be here too, because she offers a unique perspective on like, hey, like she's got a full-time job, she's got bosses, people breathing down her neck. you're just, well, I don't know. I left the corporate world for sort of that reason, and that could be a whole podcast for another day. If you have a lot of responsibilities, it's going to take you longer to learn the things. That's really the value of the board and trains that we do, is so that we can help take a lot of that lift off of your shoulders, but it's still going to take you time to learn the e-collar. And if it's going to take you time to learn the e-collar, imagine how long it's going to take like your dog walker or like a family member that only spends like,
very little
time. I mean, so, part of it is resetting your expectations a little bit, show them whatever you can, but just put it in your mind that it's not going to be like you're there. And look, here's the thing. If they're not hurting anybody and you're like, they're spoiling your dog, is that really the worst thing? It's not going to hurt their training if they're not practicing bad behavior. Now, if they're practicing bad behavior and like your dog walker or dog sitter is giving you a bad report card, then you might want to start looking at, like, we do boarding for like maintenance purposes when people go away. You might want to look at options like that local to you if there are those available. We certainly provide that option to our existing clients so that you don't have anxiety and you can go lay on the beach and have your margarita or martini and not have to worry about your dog doing all sorts of bad stuff.
You could also give tips on what not to do. That might be easier.
Yeah, right. Just like, don't do this, don't feed scraps from the table, things that people that spoil dogs typically do. But the thing is too, there are going to be different rules in different environments, and you're not going to be able to like say to somebody, oh, incorporate all the same rules here. They can do the best they can, but as long as the rules are held consistent where the dog spends the most amount of time, which is your home, I would worry more about that. So that, if your dog comes home from staying with a sitter or a family member, as long as they know when they step foot into the front door that the rules are still the rules where they live, where they spend the most amount of time, that is really the most important thing. So, yeah.
Great.
What else we got? Anybody, do we have any others from earlier this week?
No.
Okay, so anybody, if you have any questions, drop it into the chat. And otherwise, I think this is a really solid, we had some really good questions, which is great. I love the questions we're getting. And I love just doing this. I think helping people is like the best job in the world. And I really mean that. So I really, really thank all of you. It seems like we kind of covered all the questions here. So I thank all of you for your support. Every Thursday, 8 p.m., tune in. And we'll be coming to you next week. So see you next time. Thanks so much. Good night.
Oh, wait, we have.
Oh,
do we have a question?
Hold on. That I see. This is one of those things. What do they do at concerts when like the lights turn off?
Oh, they come back. They come back on for like.
What is that called though?
Encore.
Somebody help us out.
Encore.
Is it an encore? When like the lights shut down and they're like, okay, see ya. And like,
encore.
It's the encore. Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess. I go to a lot of concerts. You think I would know that.
Okay.
So we have a question. Sorry, we almost shut the lights off, but we got to keep everybody on their feet. All right. So we have a question here. So, Alyssa, you want to go ahead and read this?
I can't. I have bad eyes. I can't
read
it.
All right. Well, Alyssa doesn't have a go, so I'm going to go ahead and read it.
I need a new contact prescription.
There you go. All right. It is in your defense, it is a little far away. All right. So so let's read the question. So with one of our dogs, whenever it's time for a walk, she runs from the leash. We use a prong collar with her and have for many years. Once we get the collar on, it's fine, but we have to chase her.
No, chase her down to get the collar on.
Chase her down to get the collar on. So hold on a second. Okay. So she runs from the leash. Okay, so what you want to do is I almost like turning something like this into a game. So I'm a big fan of, and I don't know if how food motivated the dog is, but if they are food motivated, if there's something they really love, just try to pair the two together if you can. I'm a big fan of that. If there's like one sort of treat or something that your dog goes nuts for, what you can do is like, you can, you go to get the leash out and like she sees the leash and it's like, yes. And like you give her a bunch of like whatever that thing is. And you want to start as soon as the dog like starts kind of being like, I don't know how I feel about this. and some dogs just like, they just make it into like a thing where like they want to be chased around, you know. I'm not saying
Don't chase them back.
Yeah, definitely don't chase them back. And so what you could also do too is, to help you with this, you could teach a recall inside. If this issue is happening inside, which I believe it is, you could teach a recall. So get like a 15-20 foot leash. You could literally just do this inside, make it like a 5-10 minute game per night where you say, you know, come, right? And you guide the dog to you, and then yes, and then you give them their favorite reward. Now, how is that going to help you with the leash stuff? Well, when they come to you, you can also, okay, now that they're there, okay, now you, guess what? You put the leash on, and then you give another reward. So you're just turning it into this game where you're calling them over to you. You're rewarding them for the act of coming to you. They're loving it. Okay, good, great. And then, okay, boop, all right, the collar goes on, leash goes on, and then here's another reward. And so you're kind of, and here's the thing, you want to do this when you have time to do it, right? Don't worry about necessarily like the thing that you have to do. Obviously, you have to take your dog on a walk. It's like a daily thing. Don't worry about that right now. Focus on like what you can do when you have the time. And then that will eventually bleed into the times where you want to, where you need this to be effective in the real life situation. So, you know, you're doing both. You're still going to have to sort of suffer through it for a little bit. But then find like whenever you have 10 minutes, just like, again, make it into a game if you can. If the dog isn't food motivated, you would just use like leash pressure. And I would just like keep like a 15-footer on and just like go ahead and put it on when the dog's not really paying attention, or like you're just like, you know, the dog's not like running from you in the moment. Just be like, hey, or if the dog's like on the couch, you can have it near you and just be like, boop. All right, goes on. And then you're like, okay, let's train some recall, right? So that they don't get into this like, oh, chase me, or I'm going to run from you or whatever. You're going to have a little bit of a poker face. If whenever they see a leash, they like turn into this like cat and mouse, you're going to have to get a little creative, but I certainly would teach a recall command to help you. And, I would just condition the hell out of that. I would just teach the dog how to come to you when you call them. I would teach a level of accountability. So after you condition this, after you know you can say the come command and bam, they're coming over to you, that's when you start teaching accountability, so that when they don't do it, little pop on the leash. Okay, now they come over. All right, leash goes on. Boom, we're moving. So you always want to start with like, you know, conditioning, you know, using treats, using rewards, but at some point, you're going to have to say, hey, I need you to do this no matter what. And that's where you can use like a nope command when you say come, and you already taught the come and you know your dog can do the command. Now that's when you're going to get into that accountability of like, I know you know this, I've seen you do it. Now I need to apply some corrections for not listening to me. So it's a combination of teaching what you want, making it into a game, and then holding it accountable from there. And again, you can put a 15-footer on inside, and just work through this. And again, try to make it into a game if you can. And I think that's going to be helpful. But certainly for dogs that are not super food motivated, you're going to have to resort to leash pressure more than anything, depending on the motivations of the dog. So hopefully that was helpful. Sorry for almost turning the lights off on everybody. That was a really good question. And again, we will be launching a e-learning platform. I've talked about it for so long, and it's driving me nuts because I hate hearing myself talk about it. I promise you very, very soon, we will have videos on everything that we're talking about here. It's going to make more sense. You're going to be able to visualize it. I've been staying up very late at night to work on this e-learning platform. I've finally narrowed in on the software or the technology we're going to use for it. I love it. I've gone through like 10 different software or like 10 different programs that all just like never did what I wanted them to do. I finally found one that could do pretty much everything we're looking for. So we're literally off to the races. We already have so much content that is filmed that we're going to be uploading. So once I can get this website live, I will be sending out an email. I will encourage everybody to create a login. We're going to have tons of free information, and then we'll have some paid courses too. Usually like the long courses, they may be a little, we might charge for those, but we will have plenty of free content so that you don't have to pay a dime. You can actually go and do many of the things that we're talking about. So I really hope to have that live by the summer. I will make it an announcement, and I will be able to finally sleep soundly, knowing that not only we got the podcast off the ground, but we also have an e-learning platform off the ground too. And then I can sleep soundly. But until that happens, I'm going to be having late nights, and I'm a night owl anyway. But really good question. Hopefully that was helpful. Thank you again for all of your support. We will see you next Thursday, 8 p.m. every Thursday, streaming on all major platforms. And you can listen to the audio on Spotify, and we are currently working on Apple Podcasts as well. So stay tuned for more updates, and thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.